It is my great pleasure to present an interview with one of the top people when it comes to the world of email. I'm joined by Vicky Smith of Flic Email. We have been corresponding for years and years, collaborating, and now it's a great pleasure to talk to you face to face.
It is. It's an honour. Like I say, after all these years, to finally be speaking like this just feels wonderful.
Well, thank you. Likewise. Now, Vicky, I find you to be somebody who explains emails in such a way that you make it so easy to understand. That's one of the gifts that I think you have. What is the cornerstone of what it is that you do with Flic Email? What would you say is the most important thing about what you do?
I think for me, the cornerstone of it has been understanding each individual business that I work with. So I think going back to what you said about breaking things down and explaining them, I think it's because when I started, I was working with, some very small businesses, often, solopreneurs, it's just the owner. They wanted to learn about email. So it was often very much kind of people starting out. So I had to slow down and explain it that way. And then as I kind of grew it and working with bigger and bigger businesses, learning, okay, well, they know certain things, but they just need to outsource it. They have got general understanding, they just need the help. So I think it's identifying what people need and taking each person or each business individually. That's been the cornerstone to then what you said, going, okay, well, I can explain this to that person where they are right now. And often, even my own process of email marketing, some people want to know everything that I do for them, like break it down, approve everything, but others will be like, I just need you to take this off my plate because I'm too busy. So understanding that that's their motivation, or that's where they are, kind of, they don't need to learn it, they just need to outsource it. So that's kind of been the cornerstone, just taking everybody or every business as it comes.
So if somebody out there, or for that matter, you, begins to work on their next email, what do you find advantageous to focus on?
I think people often have a plan. So they know kind of what they want to say and when they're going to send it. But actually, I think you need to go one step further with that. So have like the strategy side. So having the kind of the what and the when, but based on the who, the why, the how. So really going, okay, well, what's my why of sending this email? Because if I know my why, like my personal why, is it to make more revenue? Is it to make me a thought leader? Then when you sit down to write that email, it's got more focus. And if you know kind of who you're sending it to, who's in your audience, are you sending it to a segment or are you sending it to the whole list? Again, you get that more focus rather than going, this is what I want to say, here's my message, send. If you take the time to kind of have all the elements of your strategy, your message is much more relevant and therefore, your email does so much better. So I think that a lot of people don't necessarily sit down and do all that strategy part before they write or design or send their emails.
That is so true. I mean, I think everybody out there can recall an email, perhaps one that they've received already this month, where the reader is left wondering, what was the relevancy of this? What's the point? I mean, I've used them as an example a couple of times, and I won't name them, but they're my financial institution. And they're a big fan of sending emails. Like, they will send an email to update you that they have installed new air conditionings.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do I need to know this? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I have a very similar one. My home insurance, they always send a newsletter. And the newsletter subject line is always like, this is your May newsletter. This is your June newsletter. And I'm like, you've put no thought into the subject line, which makes me then think, actually, you've put no effort into the content. It will just be like, we do this, like you say, we're doing this during June, or you should get this type of insurance during June. But if you've not thought through those small elements, like they're obviously not thinking about what you need to hear. They're thinking about what they want to send. And my insurance company aren't thinking through the smaller details of like subject lines. Then we stop opening. So that those industries in particular, I think, need some work.
They need a consultation from Flic Email.
I would love to give them one.
Tell us about some of the others, Vicky. What are some of the most common problems that you see in email marketing?
I would say there's the not having the strategy piece. There's often the first thing I always look for is there consistency between what people sign up for and what they receive? Because I think sometimes that gets lost. So we will sign up to a bit like, I get opted into this insurance email and say they were meant to bring, if they're meant to saying they're going to give me kind of news and offers and things, is that what's being delivered in the content? And I think sometimes businesses start sending the emails because they know that email has a great ROI, it gets good, open rates, people love email. So they'll start sending it, but it starts to get a bit repetitive or a bit dull. And you need to go back to kind of, well, am I sending people what I promised they would send them? Am I making it relevant? Again, like I said, with the strategy. The other mistakes I see. Oh, this is good. I would say worrying too much about design. I think people worry too much about design and fonts, especially. Email isn't easy, the design side of things, because of the limitations. There's all these stats on how many different ways your email can kind of display with all the different browsers, all the different devices. So people spend a lot of time making beautiful graphics and things like that, when actually, if your message and your focus is, again, coming back to that strategy point, if that's not good, it doesn't matter how pretty your email looks, it's still not going to get the outcome that you want. So I think that would be another big problem. And then the other thing I see a lot, and this is a big, big one of why I love Zero Bounds, is one of the things that whenever I'm auditing, people don't clean their lists as much as they should. And you probably hear this quite a lot, but yeah, people don't like to let go of subscribers, and they don't look at the reporting side of, okay, well, who hasn't opened our emails for 3 months, 6 months, that kind of thing. They don't like to lose subscribers so often. Yeah, that's another thing I see a lot in the kind of the practical, like, email service provider side.
Well, on that note, Vicky, is there something that you think somebody can maybe better understand about that? It's so hard to say goodbye. And people, they don't want to, they think, oh, I've worked this far, and you're telling me, according to this audit, I need to drop 100 people? And they
Yeah.
think of it in those terms. Maybe there's a way that they can look at that differently.
Yeah, I think what it is again, it comes back to that kind of quality over quantity. I think you need to understand your own kind of data well. So often we will look at, if when we come to the list cleaning, there's a lot of factors that play into it. So if someone is likely to buy from you just once, or if they haven't bought from you in 6 months, are they likely to buy? So really looking through the data. And when you sit down and look at it and say, okay, but these people are just kind of sat there, they're not opening. What are the reasons? You can then start to say, well, do we do kind of some kind of win back? Will that work? And oftentimes it doesn't. And then you can say, okay, well, let's let them go, because you're just kind of shouting into the void, aren't you? And not getting anything in return. So what you want to be doing is concentrating and putting all your love into those people that are going to open and going to kind of engage with you, because at the end of the day, then that starts to impact. If you're just collecting people that are never going to open, it's going to impact things like your deliverability and things like, and your price that you're paying for, like your ESP. If you're just collecting, emails that are going to sit there, yeah, there's a lot of factors. And I think once I explain that to my clients, and yeah, they don't like to say goodbye, most of them, but once you've laid out a good case of, and people can start to see it logically, then it makes sense. And once you've taken them out, you'll have better data, so that your actual emails that you send, that's another factor I like to point out to people, is once you've sent that email, after the first one, after you've cleaned your list, that's accurate reporting you're getting on open rates and click rates, because it's taken out all those people that were never going to open anyway.
Right, right. These are very good things to keep in mind. Something that I hear from people from time to time, either they write to me or I see people when we do a webinar, it's a very common thing. People say, I've checked my data. The email list is good. It seems that I have fallen into a bit of a funk. I don't know what it is, but it just seems a little stale, not much happening. What do you think someone can do when they are in that so-called email funk?
Yeah. It's usually I have swipe files for everything. So I've got swipe files for like copies and designs, and that's basically what I mean by that is I screenshot or save every email that I love and put them in swipe files. So often I will encourage people when I first start working with them. I'm like, well, whose emails do you like? What are other people within your industry doing? And a lot of times people haven't kind of looked up and around at what's possible. Kind of, you can, there's interactive elements now. There's different ways you can come at incentives and things like that. So starting like to create, even if you're not in that funk now, just like anytime, starting to save things you love and then going through and going, okay, well, so and so did that. Could I test that with my audience? So if I don't know, instead of having my uh, banner image that I always have at the top, could I instead have like a headline, short bit of copy, a button, and then have some images further down? Whatever it is, just kind of mixing up and you can A/B split test it however you want to do it, trying that and seeing whether people respond to it. You might find that actually it doesn't do well. And what you were doing was actually, even though you felt like you were in a funk, your audience loved it. But that then shows you, if you've got that, like that, that A/B test, you can go, okay, well, at least I know that now. And what I was doing wasn't bad. But or you might find a new design or a new way of doing things mixes it up and people love it. And you can start to test those things. But that's kind of the process I go through if people maybe have been doing one thing for a very long time. And I would also, yeah, I find a lot of people come into where people come into their rut isn't necessarily the emails that they're sending. They're sometimes like, well, we always send this email on a Sunday. Is that the correct day to be sending it? And it's kind of like, well, if you've been doing that for 3 years, that's what people expect. But yeah, you could test other send times and see if that helps, things like that. Or just the tiny things and testing them. Because if you feel like you're in a rut, you don't know until you go out and actually try something.
Very good information. Now, it sounds like from this interview, and also anyone who follows you on social media, which I recommend, you can find Vicky Smith on Instagram at Vicky underscore Flic email. Just remember, there's no K in Flic email, there is in Vicky. But follow her on Instagram. It sounds like you are a big fan of testing. Would you say that's accurate?
I do, because I think, like I said, like I was hinting at, you don't know until you try. And if you're always there's always that little bit more, isn't there? Like, and I get this with my clients. They're doing well, but they just want that little bit more. And I think that's how you get it. You kind of, and I think it's also testing is a really good way to get to know your audience. So we all kind of have our ideal client, our ideal customer in our head, and we think we know them well. But how people interact with email is quite different to how people interact with social media or things like that. So getting that information on how and what people like with their email comes from that testing. I've been quoting the zero bounce survey, the one on the Gen Z, quite a lot, because I really love the bit where it's a bit like 63 or 65, I'm probably misquoting it, it's around that amount of Gen Z think email is going to stay around for many, many years to come because they like the breathing room from the DMs. And I thought that was really interesting because then again, that testing comes in going, okay, well, if we've got some Gen Z in our audience, let's test, how we send to them, because the message might be slightly different to what we're doing on social media with that audience. So I think testing is really good fun for that. It's really getting to know people and how they want and what they want from your emails.
Well, Vicky, I'm so delighted that you have found use from the survey data. I think it's really interesting information myself. Now, we have email marketing experts out there, and a lot of people can think about them, but I think there's a rare top 1% of people who you can tell they have an email passion. And I think you are in that group and you have a way of getting people excited about email. But Vicky, what is it that excites you the most about email?
I think it always feels to me And I'm glad that that comes across. It always, I don't know, but it comes down to a personal thing like social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. I personally like being on those platforms, but I've always got a bit of a kind of, oh, I'd rather, yeah, a bit of a barrier. With me, with email, I always feel that's more personal. It's the brands I've signed up to. It's, personalities or, people that I want to hear from. So I think it's really exciting to be an email marketer and go, this person, even if they're new or they've bought 5 times, this person's interested in our brand. So how can we kind of share them and tell them more? And I really like that. Yeah, it feels like it's that personal side of it, and I think that's why I like it so much. The other side of that, and what I love is, like I said, I work with a variety of different businesses, and they're a lot bigger now. But there are people behind those brands. Like I get to know them really well when we kind of go through the process of working together. And I love that I can be part of building that brand with what I can do through email. So email's like my tool that I can help people with. So I think it's, yeah, get those both sides of that, kind of build what I love doing.
Have you experienced an occasion in which the problem, what you basically diagnosed as the problem, was in fact that they had not been cleaning their list? Have you experienced that?
Yes, I guess the example that came to mind straight away is I've seen recently a few times. Now because I work with a lot more e-commerce brands at the minute, kind of the bots coming in, spam bots and things signing up. And often I'll say, people will be like, oh, my email open rates are dropping, or I'm getting loads of unsubscribed and people are complaining, or I've got started to get abuse reports for the first time. And then if you go and look, yeah, they're not paying attention to that list cleaning bit or how people are coming into their list. So that's probably the one this last maybe 12 months, 18 months that I've probably seen the most. A couple of the e-commerce brands that I've worked with, and then we've had to approach it in a couple of ways. So, okay, well, do we turn on recapture, double opt-in? Do we have, then we've got to deal with the problem that the people that are in the list, we've got to run them through, zero bounce and kind of go, okay, well, which ones have kind of got through the net that we need to kind of go and start putting. It's a cleanup job, but it's also then the preventative. But that seems to be the thing that I've seen a lot recently. Yeah.
Something that I have always been interested in is the different techniques that people use, the tactics. Sometimes they're almost like trends, but for example, there's an author that I subscribe to his emails, and his tactic is he jumped on the technique of really short at times. If he didn't have a lot to say, he would send a brief message. And sometimes it was kind of refreshing. Like he sent an email a couple weeks back and he said, I know I said that the book was going to be ready by June. In fact, it's not. It's going to be ready by July. Sorry. And that was the email. Nothing else. No essay about changes in his life or whatever. I'm hoping you can maybe share with us, are there any tactics or techniques that you have observed that you thought are working very well? At least they're working well on you.
I think, yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that kind of not like hooky. And I want to say it's not even a shock tactic. It's almost like a note from, like I was saying, email can be quite personal. It's a note from someone, and I like what he's done there because it's that note. I'm just getting you up to speed, that kind of thing. And it feels like you're just getting an everyday email rather than a marketing email. I think there's a lot that's doing well at the minute, but I think that is almost part of the trend or the move towards storytelling or having almost like a personality or a person writing those emails. I'm not a massive fan of the phrase write like you're talking to a friend, because I think that's almost like a bit too overfamiliar, but it's that idea of you don't necessarily have to be formal. Like you don't suddenly have to start writing like you're doing a blog that you've used all your SEO in. It can be that kind of a bit friendlier. It can be from your brand voice rather than that really formal. And I think that's working really well. And I think that's probably what he's done there. The other thing that I've noticed a lot recently is that conversation between that short and long email. Because I think short, so I do a lot of e-commerce, so a lot of what I do is quite short format. But where necessary, we use longer, I will write longer form content. And I started my YouTube back in January where I do email teardowns. I've had 7 guests so far, and 6 of them have brought. And bear in mind, I asked them to bring emails that they like. So we kind of then look at what they loved and what made them convert, that kind of thing. Yeah, 6 out of the 7 brought really long emails, like ones where you had to scroll and scroll and scroll. And that really surprised me because in my head, I've always kind of been taught, yeah, maybe the shorter format is the kind of the way to go. And the 7th person brought a really short email, but it was a series of 6 emails, 6
Hmm.
short emails, which I thought was really interesting because even that combined was a longer format. So I don't think that there's as much of a clear cut between the short and the long anymore. I think actually, if there's a need for the long email, and it might be that guy that sent you the short email, when he launches the book, he might have, the longer format where he's telling you all about, about the content and things. And I quite like that combination of using the both now to kind of complement each other. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in a lot of ways that would mimic the real world, so to speak, in that sometimes hey, I've got nothing to report right now. And then the next time you may have, hey, guess what? There's a lot to be said here. Here's a novella. And for the right audience, they might absorb that and say, oh, wow, this was wonderful. In fact, I'm going to forward this to my friend. Vicky, for anybody out there who wants to make money with email, and this is something I hear from a lot of people. They say, I've got an email list. I've thought about ways to monetize it. For someone who wants to make money with email, what do you think is the right mindset to have?
I think this is a mindset for life as well. I think it comes down to giving. Like you can't turn up in your emails and be just selling all the time because, and I think we've all come across brands that do this. It's just promotion after promotion after promotion because they just want to, and you can quite clearly tell they just want to make some money. They want to make a sale. I think there's got to be some form of value. And I don't mean value as in you kind of sit there and you go, okay, we've written a blog for you, or here's a tip on, like, it can be that kind of value, but it can also be value through something funny, like something you think is fun, like sharing a joke with them, or telling a story, or, like your brand story, or whatever it is, or even, yeah, kind of thinking outside the box. Or my great friend Emily Ryan, she sends a wonderful email, my fellow email marketer, and a lot of her, like, she has her things in there. She's selling her services, but she has links to other things that she knows her audience will love. So things that she's come across that week that she's found useful or funny, and she links out to them. That's really clever because you're you're saying, okay, well, I'm here when you need me. Here's some stuff I think you'll love. And it's that balance, I think, rather than going into it with, I need to make money, I need to make money, because that comes across. So it's thinking and getting to know your audience and going, okay, what can I turn up with to give them something so that I stay top of mind. They want to keep coming back so that when they need me, they'll come to me and I'll make that sale.
Well, thank you for mentioning top 1% email person, Emily Ryan. And on that note, this is a good time. Vicky, you and I, and Emily for that matter, we're music people. You could
Yes.
ask us, what's your favorite song? And probably from one week to the other, we'll have a different answer. And I've asked you a similar question, Vicky, but if there is a song that could best describe Flic email and by by connection, what would that song be?
I have to tell you, Paul, I really overthought this because I was like, I took it because it was a music question. I did take it very seriously, my task. There is there's a guy called Beans on Toast, and he's an English folk singer, and he sings some very political bits. You should go and check him out. I think he's wonderful. But he sings a song called A Beautiful Place, and I think that would summarize Flick Email and myself for two reasons. The first one being there's a line in it that says survival of the friendliest. And a lot of what I have done and why I'm probably still going after 8 years and making friends like with, people like Emily and yourself is that I have focused a lot on collaborations and finding people that complement what I do. So I'm like a strategist and a copywriter. I need platforms like Zero Bounce to help me out with the kind of the other side because, I'm not necessarily as techy as some other email marketers. So that's why I love to kind of build that. The second reason I chose A Beautiful Place is because it's just a feel good song about being nice, which sounds really dull. But actually, all the compliments I have ever been given about my work are that I'm a very calm person to work with, that I am reliable, that I turn up. And for years, I thought that meant that I was quite dull. And actually, I've now learned that's kind of my superpower and why, yeah, over these years. So actually, sometimes just being nice and turning up and doing the work that you're meant to do is the best thing you can do. So yeah, I told you I completely overthought it. But yeah, beans on
No,
toast.
no, that was, I mean, I'm impressed to say the least. And I can't wait to look up the song. I'll never forget that name, Beans on Toast.
Yeah, he like I say he's very niche. He's a British folk singer. Yeah, and he does some beautiful songs. He's got a lovely voice.
Well, there've been some great ones from over there, that's for certain. So I always love this question. It always enriches my day right away. And I'd like to know from you, Vicky, how can anyone out there, anyone at all, make today better?
I would compliment someone. I one of my favorite things, so I send my weekly newsletter on a Saturday morning, and occasionally someone will hit reply. Not occasionally, every now and again. That makes it sound like I never get compliments. Every now and again, I get someone who hits reply, and I got one just this weekend from someone I worked with a couple of years back. She just messaged to say, "I loved this email. I love reading your emails." It wasn't much, but all day yesterday, I had a big smile on my face. And I think it takes 2 seconds, doesn't it? So even if you can't go outside and you're not going to see anyone today, did someone write you a nice, has someone written a good newsletter? If you hit reply, it's going to go to them, tell them that they did a good job, that you liked the email that they wrote. Like that guy that sent you the really short email, hitting reply and going, hey, it's clever. I really appreciated that you didn't waste my time with some other content. You just sent me a little note like you would a friend. Like, I think any compliment you can give, even if it is just hitting reply on someone's newsletter, makes a really big difference.
Absolutely. That is so true. And I'll just add one thing. I hope it's not obnoxious of me to do this. But so often I find that people say, oh, well, probably everyone is saying this, and they don't compliment that thing. Go ahead and do it anyways. Follow Vicky's advice. Give them that compliment. And with that, may I compliment you on this interview?
Oh, thank you. It's fun. I love talking about emails, so it makes me happy.
I have enjoyed this very much. I hope everyone out there reading or watching has as well. And be sure, and it's flicemail.com. No K in Flic.
No.
Never.
No, and I'll tell you a little thing. Flic email is actually because I started the business because I had my daughter. So her name is Felicity. So the FLIC is from felicityemail.com. Yeah, so the Flic that's the shortened version. That's where that came from.
Well, that's a really lovely tribute.
Yeah.
Well, Vicky, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much, and I'm excited to share this with everyone.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Well, until next time, have a good evening.
Thank you.